"You're acting strange," he said, staring at me across the kitchen table. His eyes, usually warm and trusting, were now cold, probing. I had noticed him watching me more intently these past weeks, his gaze lingering a little too long, his questions a bit too pointed. It was as if he was trying to piece together a puzzle, and I was the missing piece that just wouldn't fit. I tried to brush it off with a laugh. "You're imagining things," I said, but my voice trembled, betraying my nervousness. I had been careful, or so I thought. The late nights out with the girls, the extra care I took with my appearance lately, the hushed phone calls when I thought he wasn't around. It was all innocent enough, but lying had never been my strong suit. But he wasn't convinced. "I'm not stupid," he shot back, his voice rising. "You've been different, distant. I know something's going on." His accusation hung in the air between us, heavy and undeniable. That night, after he thought I was asleep, I heard him typing away on his computer. Curious, I peeked over his shoulder to find him scrolling through a list titled, "Signs Your Spouse is Cheating." My heart sank as I read each point, realizing that to him, I was ticking off every box. The next day, I was careless. I took the Tesla to meet him, the man who had become my escape from the mundanity of my marriage. But I forgot about the car's location tracking, a modern convenience turned traitor. My husband found out. He confronted me that evening, his face a mask of pain and betrayal. "I saw where you were today," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "At the apartments on 5th Street. Why? Just tell me why." I couldn't look at him, couldn't bear to see the hurt in his eyes. "I met someone," I admitted, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "It's nothing serious, just a mistake." "A mistake?" He laughed humorlessly. "Is that what you call it?" He was right. It was more than a mistake. It was a choice, a series of choices that had led me down this path. But I couldn't bring myself to say that. Not yet. He gave me an ultimatum then, his voice steady but his hands shaking. "It's him or me. You can't have both." The finality in his tone scared me. This was real. This was happening. I wanted to tell him it was over, that I would end it with the other man. But the words felt like a lie even before I spoke them. Because the truth was, I wasn't sure what I wanted anymore. My life with my husband had become predictable, safe but dull. And this affair, it was like a fire, exhilarating but destructive. I chose to lie. "I'll end it," I said, meeting his gaze for the first time that night. "I choose you." But even as I said it, I knew the truth. I was lost, caught between the life I had and the one I thought I wanted. And either choice would break someone's heart. "I'll work on our marriage," I said, the words feeling hollow as they left my lips. I chose my family over him, but deep inside, uncertainty gnawed at me. I watched my husband's face, searching for a glimmer of hope, but all I saw was a man shattered, trying to piece his life back together. We started marriage counseling, a weekly ritual that felt more like a reckoning. Sitting in that room, with its sterile walls and a therapist who nodded more than she spoke, I felt like an actor in a play. We talked, or rather, we took turns speaking, our words carefully chosen, our emotions veiled. But the silences, oh, those were loud, filled with all the things we couldn't say. Meanwhile, he threw himself into job hunting, a desperate attempt to bring some normalcy back into our lives. He'd always been ambitious, but now there was an urgency to it, as if a better job could fix the gaping hole in our relationship. I admired his determination, but it only served as a reminder of the chasm between us. The distance grew, inevitably. We started sleeping in separate rooms, a physical manifestation of the emotional gulf that had formed. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how we got here, how I got here. The man I once shared a bed with, my confidant, my partner, now felt like a stranger living under the same roof. I tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy for our daughters. The eldest, at 17, was perceptive, her eyes often lingering on us, brimming with unasked questions. The youngest, just 5, remained blissfully unaware, her world still revolving around cartoons and crayons. I started taking them out more, just the 3 of us. Parks, movies, ice cream shops, little escapes from the tension at home. But excluding him felt wrong, yet including him felt worse, a pretend play of a happy family that we were no longer. In those moments, away from the stifling atmosphere of our house, I'd watch our daughters laugh and play, and my heart would ache. This wasn't the life I had envisioned for them, nor the mother I wanted to be. But I was trapped in a web of my own making, Each lie, each evasion, a thread holding me captive. I knew I should feel more, do more, to mend the fissures in our family. But the truth was, I was tired. Tired of pretending, tired of the guilt, tired of the yawning void inside me. I wanted to care, to fight for my marriage, my family, but the energy, the will to do so, had seeped out of me, leaving a shell of the woman I once was. And so, our days became a monotonous loop of counseling sessions, job applications, and forced family outings. A dance of going through the motions, each step taking us further away from what we once had, from who we once were. "Happy anniversary," he said, his voice lacking the warmth it used to have. Our 18th anniversary dinner was nothing like the ones before. The restaurant was fancy, the kind we used to save for special occasions, but the air between us was heavy, filled with unspoken words and unshed tears. I tried to smile, to make small talk, but each word felt forced. We were like actors in a play, going through the motions, pretending for the sake of what? I wasn't even sure anymore. The food tasted bland, the wine too sweet, and all I could think of was the mess I'd made of our lives. A few days later, he confronted me with the phone records. "You're still talking to him," he said, his voice trembling with anger and hurt. I couldn't deny it, the evidence was right there in black and white. The late-night calls, the texts, the lies. "I want a divorce," I blurted out. The words hung in the air, irreversible and shattering. I'd thought about it a million times, but saying it out loud made it real, final. He looked at me, his face a mask of pain and disbelief, and for a moment, I wanted to take it all back, to rewind time and make different choices. But it was too late for that. I continued talking to the other man, telling him that my husband and I were divorcing. It was a half-truth. The divorce hadn't started, but in my mind, it was already over. I kept my husband in the dark, a cruel deception born out of cowardice and confusion. Then came the day he accidentally discovered the truth. He saw a text message, a casual, "Can't wait to see you," popping up on my phone when I was in the shower. I walked into the room to find him holding my phone, his face a mixture of rage and sorrow. "You're still seeing him," he said, his voice hollow. "Even now, even after everything." I had no words. What could I say? That I was lost? That I was torn between two lives, two versions of myself? That I didn't know who I was anymore? We stood there, in the silence of our bedroom, the room where we'd shared so many moments, good and bad. Now, it felt like a battleground, the air thick with the remnants of our broken promises and shattered dreams. That night, I lay awake in bed, alone, listening to the sound of his breathing in the other room. It was a sound that once brought me comfort, a reminder that I wasn't alone in the world. But now, it was just another reminder of everything that had gone wrong. Our anniversary dinner, meant to be a celebration of our life together, had turned into a prelude to the end. And as I drifted into a fitful sleep, I couldn't help but wonder how we got here, how I got here. From love to lies, from vows to betrayal. This wasn't the life I'd imagined, but it was the one I'd created. And now, I had to live with the consequences. It started with a text message. A simple, furious text from my husband to him, unraveling the web of lies I had spun around both of them. "She's still married, not separated," he wrote. "She's been lying to us both." I found out about it when my phone buzzed with an angry call from the other man, the AP. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded, his voice a mix of confusion and betrayal. I could hear the anger bubbling beneath his words, a volcano on the verge of eruption. I tried to explain, to justify, but my words sounded hollow even to my own ears. "I was going to tell you," I stammered, but the lie was evident. The argument that followed was brutal. Accusations flew, harsh words slicing through the last thread of our relationship. He couldn't understand how I could have lied to him, just like I couldn't understand how I had ended up here, in this mess. It ended with a click, the line going dead, a finality that left me reeling. I thought it couldn't get worse, but I was wrong. My husband confronted me again, this time with evidence of my continued deceit. "I saw your Amazon history," he said, his voice cold and steady. "You've been shopping for him and his kids for Christmas. How can you still lie to my face?" I panicked, falling back on denial and gaslighting, a defense mechanism that had become second nature. "You're being paranoid," I retorted, trying to deflect his accusations. "It's just shopping. It doesn't mean anything." But even as I said it, I knew how feeble it sounded. The truth was staring us both in the face, undeniable and ugly. I had been shopping for another man and his children, a reality that betrayed the depth of my infidelity. He didn't buy my excuses, of course. How could he? I had lied too many times, crossed too many lines. Our conversation turned into a blame game, a vicious cycle of accusations and denials. I blamed him for ruining my new relationship, for not trusting me, for not being enough. He blamed me for lying, for cheating, for breaking our family apart. It was a dance we had become too familiar with, a destructive tango of hurt and resentment. And in the middle of it all, I realized how far I had fallen. From a wife and a mother to a liar and a cheater, trapped in a life of my own making. As I lay in bed that night, alone in the darkness, the magnitude of my actions weighed on me like a physical burden. I had lost the trust of the man I once loved, the respect of my daughters, and now, the affection of the man I thought was my escape. My world, once so bright and full of possibilities, had shrunk to a small, dark corner of guilt and regret. And the worst part? I had no one to blame but myself. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you do, please take a moment to hit that like button. It really helps me out and lets me know you appreciate the content. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Subscribing is a great way to stay updated with all the latest videos and to be part of our growing community. It's quick, it's free, and it ensures you won't miss out on any upcoming content. So go ahead, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Your support means a lot and keeps this channel going. Thanks for watching. There it was, our two cars, side by side, undeniable proof of the ongoing affair. I didn't see him at first, my husband, standing there, just staring. The look on his face when I finally noticed him, it was like he'd been punched in the gut. I had no words, just a sinking feeling in my stomach. There was no talking my way out of this one. Later, he told me about a conversation he had with the app's friend. Did you know his ex-wife cheated on him? He asked, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. Talk about irony. I felt a pang of something, guilt mixed with a twisted sense of kinship to a woman I'd never met. The next thing I knew, he was seeing a divorce lawyer. I overheard him on the phone, discussing custody and assets. It was happening, the end of our marriage. It felt surreal, like watching a movie about someone else's life. Christmas was lonely that year. We were all under the same roof, but we might as well have been worlds apart. The girls tried to keep the holiday spirit alive, but the tension was palpable. We exchanged gifts mechanically, forced smiles plastered on our faces. I couldn't help but wonder if this would be our last Christmas together as a family. When the divorce proceedings officially started, it hit me. This was real. I was losing my husband, my family, my home. Papers were signed, and meetings were held, each one chipping away at the life we had built together. Looking back, I couldn't help but think about how we got here. The choices I made, the lies I told, the hurt I caused. It felt like a downward spiral, and I was powerless to stop it. I wondered if things could have been different if I had made other choices. But it was too late for what-ifs. The damage was done, and now we were all paying the price. It's funny how trouble at home can seep into every aspect of your life. Like a slow, creeping fog, it found its way into our daughter's school life. She was always such a bright kid, you know? But lately, her grades had been slipping. Her teachers called, concerned. She seems distracted, they said. It was more than that, though. The stress of our crumbling marriage was taking its toll on her. I could see it in her eyes, the way she'd look at us, full of questions she was too scared to ask. And then there were our friends and family, picking sides as if our divorce was some kind of sport. It was like watching a slow-motion replay of every social gathering we'd ever had, except now, the smiles were forced, and the conversations were strained. People I'd known for years suddenly became distant, awkward. It was as if they thought our failure was contagious. The financial strain didn't help either. We started separating our finances, which led to more arguments than I care to remember. Every discussion about money ended in a shouting match, accusations flying back and forth. It was exhausting, like trying to hold water in my hands, impossible and frustrating. The hardest part, though, was selling the house. That house was more than just walls and a roof. It was where we brought our babies home, where we celebrated birthdays and anniversaries. Every room had a memory, and now we were just giving it all away. I remember walking through the empty rooms one last time, the echoes of our life there bouncing off the bare walls. It felt like leaving a part of myself behind. In the midst of all this chaos, regret started to settle in, heavy and unrelenting. I'd lie awake at night, replaying everything in my head. Could I have done things differently? Was there a moment where I could have changed course? But as much as I wanted to, I couldn't turn back time. I couldn't undo the hurt I'd caused, the trust I'd broken. It's strange, really. You spend years building a life with someone, weaving your dreams and hopes together. And then one day, you wake up to find it all unraveling, the threads coming loose, one by one. You want to stop it, to pull everything back together, but sometimes it's just too late. Sometimes, all you can do is watch as everything you built falls apart around you. The custody battle over our younger daughter was like walking through a never-ending storm. Lawyers, courtrooms, and endless arguing. It felt like every word I said was twisted, every move I made scrutinized. I wanted what was best for her, but so did he. And in our quest to win, it felt like she was the one losing the most. It didn't help that our dirty laundry had been aired for all to see. The affair, once a secret, was now public knowledge, splashed across social media and whispered about in grocery store aisles. I could feel the judgmental stares, hear the hushed tones as I walked by. Our social reputation, once pristine, was now tarnished. I was the villain in their eyes, the woman who broke up a happy home. Amidst this chaos, I made the difficult decision to move out of the family home. Packing up my things felt surreal, like I was erasing myself from my own life. Each item I put into a box was a memory, a piece of a past that was slipping away. The house, once filled with laughter and love, now echoed with the silence of our broken family. Leaving was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But I wasn't the only one struggling. My husband lost his job amidst all the personal turmoil. The stress, the court dates, the sleepless nights, it all became too much. He tried to keep it together for the girls, but I could see the strain was wearing him down. It was heartbreaking to watch the man I once loved, so strong and confident, crumble under the weight of our collapsing world. And then there was our older daughter. She had always been such a good kid, level-headed and responsible. But as our family fell apart, so did she. She started skipping school, talking back, staying out late. It was like she was a different person, one filled with anger and hurt. I tried to reach out to her, to understand what she was going through, but she pushed me away. "You've ruined everything," she'd yell, her words cutting deep. I knew she was right, but I didn't know how to fix it. In the midst of all this, I felt lost. Lost in the legal battles, lost in the public scrutiny, lost in the ruins of my family. I had set off a chain of events that I couldn't stop, consequences that rippled out, affecting everyone I loved. It was a hard pill to swallow, realizing that the life I had once cherished was now just a pile of broken pieces. And the worst part? I had no one to blame but myself. Sitting in that courtroom, surrounded by lawyers and legal jargon, I felt like I was in the middle of a bad dream. The divorce trial was nothing like I had imagined. It was cold, formal, and utterly devoid of the love that once defined our marriage. Each word from the lawyers felt like a nail in the coffin of our relationship. The battle over assets was particularly bitter. We had built a life together, accumulated things with shared dreams and hard work. Now, it was all being dissected and divided like mere business transactions. I watched as our possessions, our memories, became bargaining chips, fought over with a ferocity that left me breathless. It was hard to believe that these things, once symbols of our life together, were now just points to be argued over in a court of law. In the midst of this legal battle, my affair, which had been my escape, turned into another anchor pulling me down. Rumors started at work, whispers behind my back, looks of pity mixed with disdain. I could feel my professional reputation slipping away. My performance suffered, my focus waned, and I could sense the disappointment from my colleagues and superiors. It was a downfall of my own making, and it stung with every whispered gossip and sidelong glance. When the final verdict of our divorce was announced, it was like waking up to a harsh new reality. The financial loss was significant for both of us. The life we had built over years was dismantled in a matter of months. Savings, investments, plans for the future, all of it had to be reevaluated, redistributed. It wasn't just the loss of assets, it was the loss of security, of plans we had made together. The finality of it left me reeling, struggling to comprehend how everything had changed so drastically. And then, the AP left me. He said the situation was too complicated, too messy. He couldn't handle the drama, the constant strain. His departure was a bitter pill to swallow. I had risked everything for this relationship, and now I was left with nothing. He walked away with ease, leaving me to pick up the pieces of my shattered life alone. It was a wake-up call, a harsh reminder of the consequences of my choices. I had lost my husband, strained my relationship with my daughters, jeopardized my career, and now, even the man I left them for was gone. I sat alone in my new, smaller apartment, surrounded by boxes of a life that once was, and I couldn't help but wonder, was it all worth it? The answer echoed in the empty rooms, a resounding, unequivocal no. As I watched him from a distance, juggling groceries and our youngest daughter's school backpack, I couldn't help but marvel at how well he had adjusted to being a single parent. He seemed more organized, more focused. I could see the strain of solo parenting on his face, yet there was a determination in his eyes that I hadn't noticed before. It was his new normal, a life he was building without me, and he was doing it with a resilience that both impressed and pained me. In contrast, I found myself spiraling into isolation. Friends who once filled my days with laughter and plans were now distant memories. Family gatherings happened without me. The empty seat at the table was a stark reminder of the consequences of my actions. My world, which used to be so full of people and warmth, had shrunk to the confines of my small apartment. The silence was deafening, a constant echo of the choices I had made. Financial hardship hit us both hard post-divorce. The legal fees, the division of assets, and the cost of setting up separate homes drained our savings. I struggled to make ends meet, juggling bills and unexpected expenses. The lifestyle I was accustomed to seemed like a distant dream. Every penny spent was a reminder of the financial stability I had once taken for granted, now a casualty of our broken marriage. Our daughters, caught in the crossfire of our split, started therapy to cope with the divorce. It broke my heart to see them struggle, to watch as they grappled with emotions too complex for their young minds. Therapy sessions were their safe space, a place where they could unravel their feelings. I'd often find little notes or drawings from their sessions, glimpses into their inner turmoil. It pained me to know that their pain was a result of my actions. Amidst all this, I found myself reflecting on my mistakes. The guilt was a constant companion, gnawing at me in quiet moments. I tried to express my remorse to him, to apologize for the hurt I had caused. But my attempts were met with coldness, a barrier that he had rightfully built around himself. He listened, nodded, but his eyes were void of the warmth they once held for me. It was a rejection that stung, a clear message that some wounds were too deep to heal. In those moments of reflection, I realized the full extent of the damage I had caused. Not just to my marriage, but to my family, my children, and myself. The road to forgiveness, both seeking it and giving it to myself, was long and uncertain. But it was a journey I knew I had to undertake, a path I had to walk to find some semblance of peace amidst the chaos I had created. He got a new job, a fresh start in a different company. I heard about it through the grapevine, our once shared friends now more his than mine. He seemed happier, or at least as happy as one could be under our circumstances. It was a good job, one that demanded much of his time and energy, but it also gave him a sense of purpose, a reason to get up in the morning. I was glad for him, truly, but his moving forward also made me painfully aware of how stuck I felt in my own life. In the quiet of my apartment, I had a lot of time to think, to reflect on everything that had happened. The loneliness was overwhelming, a constant reminder of the cost of my actions. I had lost my family, my friends, and the stability that I once took for granted. Some days, it felt like I was living in a fog, going through the motions of life without really living. The full impact of what I had done, the lives I had upended, weighed heavily on me. I wondered if I would ever be able to forgive myself, to move past the guilt and the regret. Then came the rumors about the app's new affair. It felt like a cruel twist of fate, a mirror reflecting my own mistakes back at me. The news spread quickly, the gossip mill churning out details that were both painful and familiar. I couldn't help but see the irony in it all, the cycle of cheating continuing on, leaving more broken hearts in its wake. It was a stark reminder of the destructive nature of infidelity, a pattern I had been a part of. Amidst all this, my ex-husband took a step that surprised me. He shared our story publicly, speaking about the cost of infidelity. His words were raw and honest, painting a vivid picture of the pain and destruction caused by cheating. It was a brave thing to do, to lay bare our most private pain for the world to see. But he did it with the hope of preventing others from making the same mistakes we did. His message was clear. The cost of infidelity is high, and the damage it causes can be irreparable. As for him, he continued to focus on our daughters and his new life. He was rebuilding, piece by piece, a world that had been shattered. It wasn't easy, I knew that. There were challenges, setbacks, moments of doubt. But he faced them with a resilience that I admired. He was creating a new normal for himself and our girls, a life filled with love, stability, and hope. Watching him from a distance, I couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and sadness. Pride in the man he had become, the strength he had shown. And sadness for the part one played in his need to rebuild. Our paths had diverged, his leading him to new beginnings, and mine. Well, I was still figuring that out. But one thing was clear. We were both moving forward, in our own ways, learning from our mistakes and trying to build something new from the wreckage of our